At the time of recording this video, we are now about 3 weeks away from the release of Matt Reeves' The Batman movie. So, of course, the interviews and the bits of information surrounding the movie are coming thick and fast. I came across a few fascinating interviews with Robert Pattinson and Matt Reeves that give us a look into the mindset and psychology of this version of Batman. Let's get into it. So this information comes from a variety of interviews that have recently come out. One with Insider and one with Den of Geek. I won't read you the full articles as you should definitely head to their websites to check them out for yourself, but there is a ton of great stuff in there. I do want to talk about the insight we got from the comments made particularly by Pattinson and Reeves. So the first thing we discover is that this scene...
The hell are you supposed to be? I'm vengeance.
Was originally supposed to go a little different. The guy would have asked, "Who the hell are you supposed to be?" and then Batman would tell him that he's vengeance, and then proceed to beat them all up.
The hell are you supposed to be? I'm vengeance.
But beating that one guy to a bloody pulp and then delivering that line has a much different effect. It's chilling, it's intimidating, and it's just scary. And it turns out that this was Pattinson's idea. He goes on to say that it's not theatrical. You just want someone to be terrified after it. And I personally think that this really gets that across. Not only to the bad guys that he's beating on, but also the audience. We get a good sense of where this version of Batman is at. He is not messing around. Director Matt Reeves also talks about how he came up with the idea to set Batman in his second year, where he is still trying to find a way to deal with what he's been through. Reeves had this to say. "I didn't want the arc to be he becomes Batman and faces off with this particular rogues gallery character. I wanted you to see an imperfect Batman who would be driven to do what he's doing in a way that was almost like a drug. He's addicted to being Batman because it's really an attempt to cope with those things in his past that we don't see. I thought that it was really fun to see a version of him that definitely hadn't mastered himself. That was definitely in the process of becoming." It's really interesting how this take is really looking more at the psychology of Bruce Wayne. He isn't just a vigilante for justice, to prevent others from going through what he went through, but it sounds like it's more of a coping mechanism. Basically a distraction to keep him from actually having to deal with his emotions. So instead he is hiding behind a mask, becoming someone else, becoming something else. I guess that's why when we see all these shots of Bruce in the trailer, he just looks miserable. He doesn't want to be Bruce. He wants to just be Batman. Pattinson goes on to say, "The Bruce part of it in this movie is probably the most different because he's a weirdo as Bruce and as Batman. He's fully committed to being Batman and he's just not seen by the city at all. He has no desire to be Bruce in this and he just wants to throw it all away. He thinks this is the way he can save himself, by living in this kind of zen state as Batman, where it's just pure instinct and no emotional baggage. Every single person he is fighting is the person who killed his parents." Pattinson also thinks that there is a part of Bruce that also enjoys the violence. "You're going out every night fighting, you have to like it to some degree." Now let's talk about the motivation behind the character of the Riddler. I've talked in the past about how this version of the famous Batman villain clearly takes inspiration from the real-life Zodiac killer. Matt Reeves actually talks a lot about this in this interview as well. The Zodiac made a costume that, frankly, isn't so different from Batman. You have a guy who basically went around in a black hood, dressed in black with an insignia on his chest, and it was utterly terrifying to think that somebody actually did that. And I thought, well, maybe there's an iteration of the Riddler that does that too. The crimes that the Riddler is committing, they're all meant to describe a history of Gotham in the wake of each of these murders. He leaves the information about these supposedly legitimate characters and shows you how they are illegitimate and how they're corrupt. And this story of corruption goes way back and actually becomes something that touches onto Bruce's past and becomes very personal. Again, something we already expected, but this suggests that the Riddler will begin to uncover some corruption from within the Wayne family. Perhaps Thomas Wayne wasn't what Bruce thought he was, and it's because of this that Nashton targets Bruce. Pattinson also made some really great comments about how Bruce looks at Selina Kyle in this version, once again giving us a great look into Batman's mindset here. Bruce is committed so hard to Batman and this kind of really binary worldview. There are only bad people, and there's only total innocence. There's no one in between at all. And then Selina comes along and it throws this massive wrench in his worldview. He's constantly trying to put her in a box of being a criminal. He's just got this quite simplistic worldview about everything, and meeting Selina is this first crack in it all falling apart. Now, I actually found this fascinating to hear that Bruce sees everything in black and white. Realistically, this is rather ironic as Batman himself is a very grey character. Yes, he is doing things for the greater good, but let's be honest, does this look like something an entirely good person would do? I don't think so. So I would imagine that Bruce begins to see a bit of himself in Catwoman, realising that this certainly is a grey area, and not everything can be treated as black and white. The last comments we get from Pattinson are about where he would like to go next, talking about how he would love to do something with the Court of Owls, a secret underground society that has ruled Gotham from the shadows for centuries, showing Batman that he doesn't know his city as well as he thought. He thinks it's his city in a weird sort of way. He thinks he's kind of built it. You've got the money and the castle, but you have absolutely no control or power over anything in the city. My takeaway from this is that perhaps Bruce also realises that money can't do everything. He can't make the necessary changes he wants to as Bruce Wayne. Sometimes if you want to change things, you have to force them. This realization, combined with the fact that he does not want to be Bruce Wayne, he does not want to face his demons and his emotions, leads to him dedicating himself to become the Dark Knight, to becoming the Batman. The other thing I wanted to talk about is Pattinson's short interview with Insider. He mentions how people were treating him differently when he was in the Batsuit. He said, "It has such a kind of totemic power. The crew looked a bit scared. It's really weird. If you don't say anything and you're just standing there, people get freaked out by it. They kind of start behaving differently around you." For me, this was really cool to hear. It doesn't seem like much, but many people's main concern with his casting as Batman is he isn't particularly intimidating. Compared with, say, Bale or Affleck, I get it, but wearing a Batman costume changes you. It changes the way you move, it changes the way you obviously look, and if people were getting intimidated by him behind the scenes, I can only imagine how great it's going to come off on screen. Okay, that's my take from the recent interviews with Robert Pattinson and Matt Reeves through Insider and Den of Geek. Again, go and check out their websites. That's it from me today. I really hope you enjoyed this video and have a great day. Don't forget to like and subscribe and return to the Batcave for more Bat content. See you guys.